This small white aircraft cost $130,000, and in this video, we're going to show you why. So we're here with Chris, and Chris, what do you do?
So I'm the director of the Colorado State University Drone Center, and also work and manage the airport here at Chrisman.
Now let's talk about what we are standing in front of, because this looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. So what is the make and the model of this drone?
Sure, absolutely. So this is an Autel Dragonfish. This is their standard model. So there's actually 3 different models of this aircraft. There's a light, which is a smaller, less expensive model, a standard, which is their standard model, and then there's actually a Pro that's about 1.5 times bigger than this aircraft and carry more payload and fly longer.
Wow. So kind of what's the purpose of this unit? Like, is this meant to lift things off the ground and move them? Is this for photography and videography? What is this drone used for?
Yeah, this aircraft is designed pretty specifically for one mission in mind, which is what you classify more as towards ISR. Okay, ISR is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. So being able to have a flying camera up in the sky that can transmit data back to you, and so you can have real-time actionable data for a variety of situations and scenarios. You could theoretically strap something to this aircraft. You're only going to get about a pound on it. It's going to affect its aerodynamics. It's not going to be as efficient in the airframe, so you wouldn't want to do this. You can do some videography out with the aircraft, and you can definitely do a little bit of mapping and modeling with the aircraft as well. There is some built-ins for that, but it's really more designed for that kind of eye in the sky approach.
So how is this engineered?
Absolutely. So and we have kind of similar in the drone world. We have kind of different categories of aircraft. Right?
Okay.
We've got what we call the multi-rotors, which you referred to as a quadcopter. The standard kind of 4 rotors, goes straight up, goes straight down, can fly around for a little while. And then, back in the old days, how I got into drones was, the RC airplanes, right? My dad and I, we would spend 3 months building one and 5 minutes crashing it. And then another, month or so putting it back together to crash it again in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Well, the RC airplanes we still have those. We call them fixed wing UAS. But this is kind of a little bit different breed. This is a vertical takeoff and landing platform. Called a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, but it can then transition into forward flight using a wing like a traditional airplane. And if you notice, you've actually got 4 rotors, right? You still have your 4 rotors like you're used to in a multi-rotor. You've got 2 on the outboard, which we call them nacelles, right?
Yep.
So these nacelles actually can rotate through their flight direction and provide thrust in different degrees. And we have our main lift rotors right here, which are used for lifting the aircraft vertically in conjunction with the outboard nacelles. So when this aircraft flies, when it's in flight, it'll take off and land using all 4 rotors going straight up vertically.
Okay. And
then it will transition to forward flight, shutting off these main rotors, locking them in a more of a slipstream, less drag profile configuration.
Yeah.
Rotating the nacelles down and then flying forward on its wing, just using its outboard nacelles. And that makes it extremely efficient use of its LiPo batteries.
And is this like a publicly available aircraft?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's not limited to the military. Like, you could buy one if you wanted.
Yeah, theoretically, if I had $120,000, I could buy it.
Wow. Well, let's get it in the air and show you what it can do.
And we'll have you go ahead and launch the aircraft.
When you hear like pro-level drone, you think big scary code. This looks very user-friendly.
It's all touchscreen based. So first thing what we're going to do is we have our RTK base station online. The aircraft's going to go through a pre-flight startup check.
Are most drones this user-friendly?
A lot of them are. Something we always do is check our safeties, just to make sure this aircraft's ready to fly. We're limited to 0 to 400 feet above ground level here. So we see our payloads operating correctly. At the top, we've got 76%. I built a mission called TFL, and we're going to change our takeoff orbit into the wind. We can tell it the radius and the altitudes. All right, so now that we've got our altitude, we've got our settings, we'll get our flight deck set up here. I'm going to hand this to you. It's your aircraft. And you say my aircraft.
My aircraft.
All right, you have the flight controls. We ask our assistant to remove the pitot tube.
Thanks, Adam. Taking off. The most boring RC plane ever made.
Pretty much.
Wow, look at that. Looks good.
So the aircraft is currently orbiting up to its working altitude.
Okay.
Or its target altitude, which we set at 390, right? It is now working that orbit circle that we designed here. We can see that the aircraft is in an orbit, and it is currently working to define that mission. We've got a couple different orbits here that the aircraft is going to do. So we can look at our wide angle camera, and this is all touch based. So you can touch wherever you want. to move the camera.
Clarity of the projection is unreal.
It's very good, yes.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Look at that.
And so we're currently flying midfield at the airfield, and we're looking around different locations.
So let's talk about some of the aspects of this aircraft. So let's start with the camera. So is that a gimbal that it's on? What are some of its capabilities?
Yeah, so this is a full 3-axis gimbal. And so this gimbal specifically, this is Autel's version. This has swappable payloads.
Oh, cool.
So in that box, I actually have what's called the T3. This is the L20 camera, so it has a 20x optical RGB or zoom camera.
Wow, okay.
And it'll go up to, I think, it's up in the 150s digital zoom. But really, you know, like any digital zoom, you start losing that clarity pretty quickly. It also has a 640 by 512 thermal camera, and then a wide angle camera for more of the pilot's aspect to be able to see what you're looking at. And then it also has a laser rangefinder in it as well.
Does it have nighttime capabilities?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it's really interesting using this aircraft at night. So the aircraft is hard to see, but it actually has standard aircraft lighting. So green on the right, red on the left, and white on the tail. Matter of fact, when I'm flying around at night, it's pretty common for me to look up and go, oh my gosh, there's an airplane, and realize, no, that's me, because it looks just like an airplane in flight. But with the thermal camera, obviously you can't see very well with the RGB, but with the thermal camera, you can see pretty much your whole world around you. It's just like having night vision, only a little bit better, because targets that are warm instantly glow.
Yeah.
And you're able to locate people, objects, things like that.
So what's this little guy in the middle that's kind of poking out the top?
These are RTK antennas and transmission antennas. So this aircraft actually talks and works with what's called an RTK base station. RTK stands for real-time kinematics. Basically, it's a GPS positioning system. Much like you have a GPS in your phone or your car, it tells you where you're at on Earth. This system actually sits here on this tripod, and it actually takes 5 different satellite constellations. So not just the standard American GPS or the Russian GLONASS. It has all of them, the one from China, European. Takes all those, gets a hyper-accurate fix. So this knows where it's at in real-time positioning on Earth within a couple centimeters. It'll know where it's at. Connected to it is the aircraft's base station antenna. So these are omnidirectional antennas, pardon me, that talk to the aircraft itself. So these are providing transmission over different frequencies to get video and telemetry back from the aircraft and transmit commands and controls from the base station itself.
So if I go to like Best Buy and get the little baby consumer drone that's $350, and I boot it up and it's got that little GPS fix that's like, okay, you're here in Fort Collins, Colorado at this location. But then I fly somewhere else, it still knows. How is something, this is really stupid, but how is like your little $300 global positioning device different than the $100,000 version?
Actually that's not much different.
Okay.
So the aircraft has a GPS receiver in it, just like your $350 drone, probably a little bit more complicated than your $350.
Okay.
Right? This has a GPS receiver in it as well. They're usually going to be higher dollar, like more accuracy, listens to more constellations, so it can get a better fix on where it is on Earth. But this one actually, since it doesn't move around, it actually aggregates where it's at in location, so it knows much better where it's at because it doesn't move, and that corrects the drone's position via radio signal in real time.
Okay.
So it gets the benefit of basically not moving while the drone is actually moving, so it can actually correct itself.
This is allowed by FAA regulation?
Absolutely.
What we're doing now, yeah?
Yep. And so we're flying underneath what's called Part 107, which is the government's regulations for small, they call it uncrewed aircraft. So you hear the common term is SUAS. So small uncrewed aircraft systems. Some of the rules that are there, most not common, like we talked about that 0 to 400 feet. Line of sight, so I can see the aircraft. I've got good line of sight on the aircraft. I know it's heading altitude and orientation right now with no problem. We have to have a commercial drone pilot's license to fly if we're going to make any type of money with our drone.
Right.
We're being compensated in any way with our drone. We have to have that. There's other rules you have to pay attention when it requires to, like visibility. So today we have a beautiful sky out here, almost no clouds, right? So we have to be within a certain distance away from clouds, and we have to see a certain amount of statute miles. For the real reason is to see and avoid any type of collision with another airplane, another type of aircraft, any other things. We also can't fly over uninvolved people, which is, it's great out here today because This is 400 acres of open land that's pretty much behind a fence that we control access to, so we can ensure that that's not an issue. But that can be one of the struggles for a lot of drone pilots, is not flying over uninvolved people or uninvolved moving vehicles.
I want to talk a little bit about batteries.
Sure.
Because I noticed that there are 2 compartments, and walk me through, you know, like we talked a little bit about up to 90 minutes of flight time. What about like recharge time, and then are these like hot swappable? Okay, they are hot swappable.
Yeah, the aircraft actually isn't hot swappable, so I have to turn the aircraft off.
Okay.
And back on before I change batteries.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so these batteries, if you look, they are, as we talked about, they are LiPo batteries. There are 6 cells. Each one of them is 12,000 milliamps.
Cool.
They actually have smart battery capacity, so there's a board inside there that monitors each cell's voltage, so we know exactly where we're at. It also has a heater built into it, so it can heat the batteries up and bring them up to flight temperature, so that we're not flying on cold batteries, which can significantly decrease their performance.
Yeah.
And charge time on these, you know, like any LiPo battery, the first 80% always goes really quickly, right? We can cram a ton of amperage and volts into the battery when it's low in its percentage value. So we can get from relatively, 20% to 80%, probably in about 40 minutes.
And I think the last question from a hardware standpoint, Chris, is remove before flight, which I heard you were saying is your little pitot tube. How come you need one on a plane this small?
Sure, absolutely. So almost all of the flight calculations, this is a true fly-by-wire system.
Okay.
And even more, I have a control station and a base station that we'll see when we fly. That control station is telling the aircraft my inputs what to do. But ultimately, all of that flight logic is being handled by a flight controller, which is a small computer that lives inside the aircraft. So the aircraft's taking various different inputs and coming up with a flight solution that matches its aerodynamics and flight capabilities.
Wow.
So it's got a lot of different sensors. Obviously, the pitot tube is the one you see. So the pitot tube is like on any airplane. The pitot tube is telling us forward airspeed.
Okay.
So it's telling us dynamic and static pressure, and it's telling us how fast we are moving through the air.
Right.
Which is critical, because I need to maintain a consistent airspeed over this airfoil to generate enough lift to counteract the weight of the aircraft. And if I get too slow, the airfoil can stall. We treat it like a real airplane in terms of its maintenance schedules, in terms of its inspections, and just making sure the aircraft's always airworthy and ready to fly.
And what's the total weight?
This aircraft, max takeoff is 9 kilograms, which if we put that in freedom units,
20 pounds, 19 pounds, yeah, okay.
20 pounds is the max we can take off with this aircraft. And you're welcome to pick it up. Just grab it by the leading edge here and just a supporting hand on the bottom, and you can just pick it up and feel about the weight of the aircraft.
And you mentioned too that there are kind of different trims available. Yeah, that's a lot lighter than it looks. So Autel sounds like has kind of like a wide range. So what does this unit start at, and what does it kind of top out at price range?
Yeah. Now again, I always say I don't work for Autel. We're independent. We are just fortunate to have one of these wonderful aircraft. So I believe their light version of this aircraft is what they call it, is around 80,000.
Okay.
This aircraft's a standard one, which is about 112,000 with a sensor. Healthy kit on this aircraft, extra batteries, flight kit, things like that, you might be up to 120,000 before you walk out the door. And then I think the next version up, which is their Dragonfish Pro, is around the 240 mark.
Wow, okay. Pretty big jump. But what you got to keep in mind, right, is if you were a government buying this unit, not that much in terms of the capabilities, because we were talking offline and it sounds like the comparable capabilities from more established or other established makers can be, 7 figures. You said that we've got a 20x zoom.
We're over here at the end of the airfield right here.
Yeah.
Touch over to us right here. We'll zoom in a little bit more and touch over here.
Can it track a moving target?
Absolutely.
All right, Chris is now monitoring the aircraft, and we're going to get Adam in his truck.
So here you go. We got Adam's truck currently locked on the camera here. And so as he transitions down the runway, we'll see how well the camera does to follow him. Yep.
There we go. Yeah, look at that.
We got him.
So now we got our target Adam is driving down the runway in his truck. And Chris zoomed in a little bit, and this is, by the way, all automatic. So Chris isn't controlling the unit at all right now, or the camera position. It's all just doing it by itself. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, and the aircraft we can lock it into a different tracking mode where it will actually adjust its flight course to follow the vehicle as well.
Gotcha. So right now we're still doing those loops.
Correct.
But if you wanted to, you could have it so that it only follows that target.
Correct.
That's wild.
You can follow the target as long as it can keep up with it. And if the target stops, the aircraft will either hover or orbit. And if the target continues, then it will follow it again.
So what does the university use this for?
Right now, one of the big things is biological wildlife surveys.
Huh.
Yeah. So being able to fly the aircraft over or around certain species, and especially because it's got such great camera capabilities away from certain species so that we don't disturb them, but be able to get good documented biological counts. We also use it in our first responders training course. So we have a course where we teach first responders how to use aircraft for good. Tom, you're going to land it. All right, so what we're going to do is we've established the direction. The aircraft is set to automatically manual land. So all you have to do right now is see that home button.
Yep.
Pretty says what it means. It means home. Keep holding it. All right.
Aircraft going home.
Now it says it's going to go home. We can see the aircraft, so we're going to follow its track. It has a predefined, if you look right here, we see this loop. This is its orbit down loop. So it's going to use that loop to safely come off that 390 feet that it's holding.
Oh yeah.
It's going to decrease that down to its target transition altitude of 250 feet.
Uh-huh.
And then it's going to fly directly into the wind, because that's how we programmed it, to its landing pad. And then once it reaches a point right over the landing pad at 250 feet, it's going to transition back into that multi-rotor configuration, and we'll be good to go. All right, so now the aircraft is transitioning. You're flying. You're over there like, I want to give this thing back.
Doing a great job here.
Good flying. You got it. Real tight. When it's above its landing point, it actually looks like it's further than it is.
Yeah.
It's actually above the landing point right now. And we'll see as it transitions down, we'll see how accurate it is on where it took off from.
Huge thank you to Chris Adam and the CSV Drone Center. If you want to find out more about what they do, be sure to click the link in the description below.